"Mister, do you know anyone who wants a kid?" In the biting cold of a city night, that sentence didn't sound like a plea. It sounded like someone giving up on themselves. A frail little girl, barefoot, clutching a torn teddy bear, stood in front of a man no one in the neighborhood dared to look in the eye. He was the kind of man whose presence alone silenced everything. A mafia boss, used to giving orders, never used to stopping for anyone. But that night, he stopped. One glance, one sentence. And what he saw in the girl's eyes wasn't fear. It was something hauntingly familiar. From that moment on, everything began to change. A secret buried for years was about to be unearthed, and a truth powerful enough to destroy an empire. But what left everyone stunned wasn't his past. It was the question, why does this little girl look exactly like the woman he once loved? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to show it. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in, and what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change a life. October 2025 in Boston carried the sharp bite of early autumn, turning cruel. The wind off the harbor sliced through the narrow streets of the North End like a blade carrying the salt tang of the Atlantic and the distant rumble of the Green Line trolley. It was late evening on a Thursday, the kind of night when the city lights reflected off wet cobblestones in fractured gold, and the air smelled of rain that had not yet fully decided to fall. Outside, the Harbor Grill, a gleaming waterfront steakhouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dark water, warm amber light spilled onto the sidewalk, mocking anyone left in the cold. The doorman, a broad-shouldered man named Tommy in a navy wool coat and black gloves, stood at his post with the practiced indifference of someone who had seen every kind of desperation the city could offer. He was about to wave off the small figure huddled against the brick wall when he paused. A girl no more than 6 or 7 stood there barefoot, her thin cotton dress clinging to a frame so fragile her collarbones stood out like fragile ridges under pale skin. Her dark hair hung in uneven matted strands around a face that might once have been pretty, but now looked hollowed by hunger and cold. A fresh bruise bloomed purple along her left cheekbone, the edges still angry red. In her arms she clutched a worn teddy bear, missing one eye, its fur patchy and grayed with dirt. The bear's remaining black button eye stared blankly ahead, as if it too had learned long ago not to hope. The girl did not beg. She did not cry. She simply lifted her head when Tommy shifted her large brown eyes, meeting his without flinching, only the quiet resignation of someone who had already been turned away too many times. Her lips cracked and blue-tinged from the wind parted. "Mister," she whispered, voice so soft it nearly vanished into the gusts. "Do you know anyone who wants a kid?" Tommy's hand froze halfway to the gesture that would have sent her on her way. The words landed like stones in still water rippling outward. He blinked once, twice. Before he could find an answer, a sleek black Escalade glided to the curb tires, hissing on the damp pavement. The rear door opened, and Vincent Callahan stepped out. Vince was tall, broad through the shoulders, fair-skinned with the kind of Irish-American features that spoke of generations in South Boston. Strong jaw, steel-gray eyes, dark hair silvering at the temples. He wore a tailored charcoal overcoat over a crisp white shirt, no-tie sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with muscle and faint scars that told stories he never shared. At 42, he moved with the controlled power of a man who owned every room he entered. Yet tonight, something flickered in his expression, something raw and unguarded, as his gaze swept the sidewalk out of habit and landed on the child. He stopped, completely. The wind tugged at his coat. He did not move. The girl Lily stared back at him, unblinking. Those eyes, too old for such a small face, too familiar. A jolt went through Vince like electricity, sharp and nauseating. The shape of her cheekbones, the slight tilt of her head when she studied him, it was impossible yet undeniable. She looked like the woman he had loved and left 16 years ago, the gentle schoolteacher who had begged him to stay out of the life, who had died alone in a hospital room while he was halfway across the state burying bodies. He had walked away to protect her. He never knew she carried his child. Guilt, old, festering, never quite buried, clawed up his throat. His heart slammed against his ribs, violent, accusing. Not possible. Not now. But the resemblance was a knife twisting deeper with every second she looked at him. Lily lowered her gaze first, as if she had trespassed by existing. "I promise I'll be good," she murmured, barely audible. "I can wash dishes. I can sweep floors. I don't eat much. I just need somewhere no one hurts me." The words were clumsy, rehearsed in the way only a child who had learned to barter her worth could manage. Vince felt something crack inside him, something he had armored over for decades. He crouched slowly, one knee touching the cold, gritty sidewalk until his eyes were level with hers. The overcoat wool, worth more than most people's monthly rent, slid from his shoulders. He draped it over her tiny frame without touching her, careful, deliberate. The fabric swallowed her like a black cloak, the hem pooling around her bare feet. Lily flinched instinctively, shoulders hunching as if expecting a blow. Vince froze, hand still extended. He did not push. He simply let the coat rest there, warm against her shivering skin. "What's your name, little one?" His voice came out rougher than intended, softened at the edges by something he could not name. She studied him for a long moment, searching for the lie, the cruelty she had learned to expect. Then in a whisper, Lily. Vince's breath caught. The name his mother had wanted for a daughter they never had. The name he had once joked about with the woman he lost. The coincidence or fate hit him like a fist to the chest. Remorse surged hot and consuming. I left her mother to die alone. I left this child to rot in the streets. Violent conflict tore through him, the urge to destroy whatever had done this to her, warring with the terror that he might be the next monster in her life. "I want to know your name," he said quietly. Lily blinked, confused. No one had ever asked with such gentleness. "Why, because I failed once. Because I won't again. Because looking at you feels like staring at every mistake I ever made reflected back in a child's eyes." He did not say it aloud. Instead, he stood, turned to Tommy. "Bring her inside. Call Dr. Ellis. Now." Tommy nodded without question. In 20 years following Vince Callahan, he had never seen his boss kneel in the street, never seen him give away his coat, never seen those gray eyes soften into something almost human. Lily hesitated at the threshold. The warmth from inside hit her like a wall, rich with the scent of seared steak, garlic butter, aged bourbon. She looked down at her filthy feet, the wet footprints she would leave on marble polished to a mirror shine. "I'll make it dirty," she whispered. Tommy crouched slightly. "Floor can be cleaned, kid. Come on in before you freeze." She stepped forward on tiptoes, silent, careful, as if noise itself were punishable. Each movement was measured, apologetic. The restaurant hushed. Diners in tailored suits and silk dresses paused mid-conversation. Waitstaff froze with trays balanced. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over white linen and heavy silver. Every eye followed the procession, the towering man in shirt sleeves, leading a skeletal child wrapped in an overcoat that dragged like a royal train. Lily shrank smaller with every stare. She clutched the teddy bear tighter, making herself invisible or trying to. But Vince walked beside her, not touching, not rushing his presence, a quiet shield. They passed through the main dining room, down a short corridor lined with framed black and white photos of old Boston waterfronts, into a small private room at the back. Vince opened the door. "Wait here. Food's coming. Water, too." Lily stepped inside, then turned back, voice barely there. "I'm sorry for the mess." Vince went still. For a heartbeat, the room held only the low hum of the heater and the distant clink of glasses. Then he said, rough but steady, "Don't apologize. Not for that. Not ever." He closed the door softly. Outside, he pulled out his phone, dialed a number he rarely used. It rang twice. Dr. Ellis's voice was calm, professional. "It's late. There's a child," he said. "She needs you. Now." A pause. "On my way." He ended the call, stood in the corridor, staring at the closed door. Behind it, a little girl was probably curled in the corner, clutching her bear, wondering if this warmth was another trick that would vanish by morning. Inside Vince, the storm raged. Guilt. Rage. A fierce, protective love that had ignited the instant he saw her eyes, sudden, overwhelming, terrifying in its intensity. He had built an empire on control, on never letting emotion weaken him. Yet here in the space of minutes, a starving child had torn through every defense. "She's mine," the realization whispered, "and someone let her suffer." He clenched his fists until the knuckles whitened. Whatever it took. Whoever had done this, they would pay. But first he would make sure she never spent another night cold again. The private room at the back of the Harbor Grill was small but warm, lit by a single brass floor lamp that cast soft pools of amber across cream walls and a deep leather sofa. A low coffee table held a crystal pitcher of ice water and a plate someone had already set, sliced apples, a grilled cheese sandwich cut into neat triangles, and a small bowl of creamy tomato soup still steaming faintly. The air smelled of fresh bread and comfort things Lily had only glimpsed through restaurant windows on nights when the hunger became so sharp it felt like knives turning slowly inside her stomach. She stood just inside the doorway, still wrapped in Vincent Callahan's enormous overcoat. The wool hung past her knees like a heavy curtain, the sleeves dangling empty past her fingertips. She had not taken it off. It was too warm, too soft, too expensive. Taking it off felt like giving back the only kindness she had been offered in months. Her bare feet left faint damp prints on the hardwood floor. She stared at them, horrified. Evidence. Proof she did not belong. Lily's legs trembled not just from cold but from the bone-deep exhaustion that came from too many nights sleeping. Curled against chain-link fences or under highway overpasses, the wind cutting through thin layers until sleep became something she chased rather than found. She had not eaten properly in weeks. Her stomach had shrunk so small that even the smell of food made it cramp in protest. Yet hunger clawed at her anyway, relentless. She did not move toward the plate. Instead, she backed slowly into the corner where two walls met, sliding down until her knees tucked against her chest. The teddy bear Bucky was pressed so tightly to her ribs it hurt to breathe. She rocked once, twice, a tiny automatic motion meant to soothe herself the way no one else ever had. Outside the door, Vince stood motionless in the corridor. His phone was still warm in his palm from the call to Dr. Ellis. He could hear the faint clink of silverware in the main dining room, the low murmur of jazz filtering through hidden speakers, the occasional laugh from a table that had money to burn. All of it felt obscene now. He leaned his forehead against the cool wall, closed his eyes. She's mine. The knowledge burned like acid, poured directly onto raw nerves. 16 years ago, he had walked away from Sarah, gentle, stubborn Sarah, who taught second grade and believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough. He had told himself he was protecting her. His world was blood and debts and late-night meetings in warehouses that smelled of rust and gun oil. She deserved better. So he left. Never looked back. Never checked. Never knew she had carried his child alone, raised her alone, died alone in a charity hospital, while he was 3 states away collecting on a debt that no longer mattered. Remorse rose in him now like a tide black, suffocating, unstoppable. It pressed against his ribs until breathing hurt. Violent conflict tore through every layer he had built. The part of him that had survived by never feeling anything clashed brutally with the part that now needed to tear the city apart to find whoever had let this child suffer. He opened his eyes, pushed off the wall, walked back into the main dining room. The room had not returned to normal. Head still turned. Conversations faltered. A woman in pearls whispered to her husband. A waiter hesitated with a bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet halfway poured. Vince ignored them all. He crossed directly to the hostess stand where Tommy waited, face carefully blank. "Any trouble outside?" Vince asked quietly. Tommy shook his head. A couple of guys from the Dorchester crew were circling the block earlier. Looked like they were waiting for someone. They saw you step out and peeled off fast. Vince's jaw tightened. "Keep eyes on the street. Anyone lingers, you let Marcus know." Tommy nodded once. Vince turned away, already pulling out his phone again. He dialed without looking. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Boss." 2 girls showed up at the door. One's hurt bad, the other's scared but sticking close. "I need you and 2 others on perimeter. Quiet. No one gets near this building tonight." "On it." Vince ended the call. His hand shook just once, barely noticeable. He clenched it into a fist. Back in the private room, Lily had not touched the food. She stared at the plate as if it might bite her. Hunger and terror wrestled inside her small body. She had learned the hard way food offered freely always came with strings. Sometimes those strings were fists. Sometimes they were locked doors. Sometimes they were men who smiled until they didn't. A soft knock sounded. Lily flinched so hard her head knocked against the wall. Pain bloomed bright behind her eyes. The door opened slowly. A woman in her late 50s stepped inside, short gray hair, pulled into a neat bun, wire-rimmed glasses, a black medical bag in one hand. Dr. Ellis. She moved with calm purpose, no sudden gestures. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently. "My name is Dr. Ellis. Mr. Callahan asked me to make sure you're okay." Lily pressed harder into the corner. Her breathing came shallow, rapid. The room tilted slightly, dizziness from hunger, from fear, from the impossible warmth pressing in on every side. Dr. Ellis set her bag down carefully. She did not approach. "I won't touch you unless you say it's all right. I just want to look and listen. That's all." Lily's eyes darted to the door. Vince stood just outside, visible through the half-open frame. He had not entered. He simply watched, silent still, his face unreadable except for the storm raging behind his gray eyes. Lily looked back at the doctor, then at the plate, then at her own trembling hands. I don't want to make trouble," she whispered. "You're not trouble," Dr. Ellis said softly. "You're a little girl who's cold and hurt, that's all." Lily swallowed. Her throat clicked dryly. Slowly, agonizingly, she uncurled just enough to let the doctor kneel at a respectful distance. The examination was gentle, methodical. Dr. Ellis spoke in a low, steady voice the entire time, explaining every movement. When she lifted the hem of Lily's dress to check her ribs, Lily whimpered once small, involuntary. The skin along her left side was mottled yellow and purple ribs crooked where they had healed wrong. Dr. Ellis's professional mask slipped for one heartbeat. Her hands trembled. Outside, Vince heard the sound. His fists clenched until the knuckles blanched white. When the doctor finally stepped into the corridor, her face was pale. Vince did not speak. He waited. "Severe malnutrition," she began, voice flat with controlled fury. "She's down to stage 3. Stomach has contracted so much that refeeding has to be done slowly, or she'll go into shock. 2 ribs on the left side fractured months ago, never set. They've knit at bad angles. She's been in pain every time she breathes deep. Multiple circular burn scars, cigarettes deliberate. At least 12 lash marks across her back in different stages of healing. 2 fingernails on her right hand torn out, not fully regrown. First-degree frostbite on both feet from walking barefoot in the cold." Vince listened without moving. Each word landed like a hammer blow. "This isn't neglect," Dr. Ellis finished. "This is torture. Systematic. Over years." Silence stretched between them, thick, suffocating. Vince turned his head slowly toward the door. Through the narrow gap, he could see Lily curled tight again, rocking, clutching Bucky as if the bear were the only thing anchoring her to the world. Something inside Vince fractured quietly, irrevocably. He walked back inside alone. Lily looked up. Her eyes were wide, glassy with exhaustion and fear. He crouched 3 feet away. Not crowding, not threatening. "Lily," he said, voice low and steady despite the war inside him. "The doctor says you're hurt. She wants to help. I'll stay right here. No one will hurt you. Not while I'm breathing." Lily stared at him, searching, waiting for the lie. He extended his hand, palm up, open, not grabbing, offering. She looked at that hand for a long time. Then, slowly trembling, she reached out. Her tiny fingers wrapped around 2 of his, held on. Vince felt the contact like a live wire straight to his heart. Love, fierce, sudden, protective, surged through him so violently it stole his breath. This child, his child, had suffered every horror the world could offer, and still she trusted enough to hold on. He would burn the city down before he let anyone touch her again. But first he would feed her, warm her, protect her, and he would find whoever had done this, no matter the cost. The small private room at the Harbor Grill had become a fragile sanctuary. Outside its door, the restaurant continued its polished rhythm, crystal glasses chiming softly, waiters gliding between tables with trays of seared prime rib and truffle mashed potatoes, the low hum of conversation from people who had never known what it felt like to wake up wondering if today would be the day hunger finally won. Inside, however, time moved differently. Slower, heavier. Lily had not left the corner since Dr. Ellis finished her examination. She sat with her back pressed to the junction of 2 walls, knees drawn tight to her chest, Bucky the teddy bear cradled like armor against her ribs. The overcoat Vincent had given her still enveloped her completely, its wool collar brushing her chin sleeves, rolled up 3 times so her hands could emerge. She had not removed it. Removing it would mean admitting this warmth might disappear, and she had learned too well that everything good eventually vanished. Her stomach cramped again, sharp twisting pain that made her breath hitch. The grilled cheese sandwich on the table had cooled the cheese, congealing into a pale yellow film. She stared at it with a mixture of longing and terror. Eating meant owing. Owing meant payment. Payment in her world had always come in bruises, or locked doors, or nights spent shivering under cardboard while the wind howled through broken windows. She rocked gently, a small, repetitive motion meant to comfort herself. The motion hurt her ribs. She did not stop. Vince stood just outside the door, one shoulder against the wall, arms folded across his chest. He had not entered since the doctor left. He watched through the narrow gap, silent, still every muscle coiled tight. Inside him, the storm had not calmed. It had only grown darker, more violent. Every time Lily flinched at a distant sound from the kitchen, every time her thin shoulders hunched smaller, the guilt carved deeper. 6 years old. My daughter. 6 years of nights like this, while I sat in heated offices counting money that meant nothing. The remorse was physical now, a burning weight behind his sternum that made breathing feel like drawing air through broken glass. He wanted to storm in, scoop her up, promise her the world. But he knew with the cold clarity of a man who had survived by reading people, that any sudden movement would shatter whatever fragile thread of trust had begun to form when she took his hand. He stayed outside, watching, guarding. A soft knock sounded from the corridor behind him. Uncle Joey, real name Joseph Moretti, head chef for 12 years, approached, carrying a small tray covered with a white linen napkin. Joey was 61, broad as a barrel, salt and pepper hair tied back under a black bandana, hands scarred from decades of hot pans and sharper knives. He had seen a lot in Vince's world. He had never seen Vince look like this. Thought she might do better with something simpler, Joey said quietly. Chicken noodle soup. Made it light. Easy on a small stomach. Vince nodded once. She won't eat if she thinks it's charity. Joey's eyes softened. Then we don't call it charity. We call it family taking care of family. He pushed the door open gently. Lily's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide, fear flashing bright before suspicion took over. Joey moved slowly, setting the tray on the low table beside the untouched sandwich. He did not crouch, did not loom. He simply sat on the edge of the sofa, far enough away to feel safe. "Hey kiddo," he said, voice gravelly but warm. "Name's Joey. I run the kitchen here. Made you some soup. Nothing fancy, just what my nonna used to make when I was sick. Smells pretty good, huh?" Lily stared at the bowl. Steam rose in delicate curls. The scent of chicken broth, carrots, celery, and egg noodles drifted toward her. Her mouth watered so hard it hurt. She did not move. Joey waited, patient. Then casually he reached for his own small bowl from the tray. "Mind if I join you? Been on my feet since 5 this morning. Legs are killing me." He took a spoonful, blew on it gently, ate it with exaggerated pleasure. Still got it. Lily watched every movement, calculating, waiting for the trap. Joey set his spoon down. "You don't have to eat if you don't want. But if you do, there's plenty more where that came from. No strings. No one's gonna take it away." Lily's lower lip trembled. She looked at the door where Vince still stood visible but not entering, then back at Joey. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Why Joey considered her for a long moment. Because sometimes the world forgets to be kind. Doesn't mean we have to forget too. Something in Lily's chest loosened just a fraction. She reached out slowly. Her fingers shook so badly the spoon rattled against the bowl when she lifted it. The first sip was tiny. Hot, salty, real. Her eyes filled with tears she did not let fall. Joey pretended not to notice. He simply ate his own soup, humming an old Sinatra tune under his breath. Outside, Vince listened to the quiet clink of spoons. His throat closed. Love, fierce, protective, all-consuming, surged again, tangled with remorse so sharp it felt like bleeding inside. She's eating, because someone showed her she could. The disparity struck him like a physical blow. His world of leather booths, aged whiskey private jets, and her world of trash cans, locked basements, nights spent counting stars through holes in a roof, because it was warmer than the floor. The injustice of it roared through him, violent and unrelenting. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Boss. 2 cars just pulled up across the street. Blacked out windows. Dorchester plates. They're watching the entrance. Vince's voice was ice. "How many?" "4 visible. Probably more inside. Keep them there. Don't engage unless they move on the building." He ended the call, looked back through the door. Lily had finished half the bowl. Color had crept into her cheeks, faint but there. Joey was telling her about the time he burned his first batch of cannoli and tried to pass them off as extra crispy. She had not laughed yet, but her shoulders had relaxed. Just a little. Vince felt the shift like a physical ache. She was beginning to trust. Not him, not yet, but the kindness around him. The realization tore at him he did not deserve that trust. Not after abandoning her mother, not after letting 6 years pass without knowing she existed. He stepped away from the door, walked down the corridor to the service exit, pushed through into the alley behind the restaurant. The night air hit him cold and clean. He leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard. Above him, the sky was bruised, purple stars faint against the city glow. Footsteps approached from the street end of the alley. 3 men stepped into view, leather jackets, heavy boots, the kind of swagger that came from carrying too much bravado and not enough sense. The leader, tall, shaved headscar across one eyebrow, smiled thinly. "Callahan, heard you picked up some strays tonight." Vince did not move. "Walk away, Tommy boy. This doesn't concern you." The man, Tommy Riordan, mid-level muscle for the Dorchester crew, laughed once. "Everything concerns us when it happens on our side of the water. Word is you got a kid in there. Small, bruised, valuable to someone." Vince's eyes went flat. "Dangerous. You're about to make the last mistake of your life." Riordan stepped closer. "We're just talking, Vince." "No need to." Vince moved fast, controlled. One hand shot out, caught Riordan by the throat, lifted him onto his toes, and slammed him against the opposite wall. The other 2 men froze. "Listen carefully," Vince said, voice low, lethal. "That girl inside, she's under my protection. You come near her, you look at her, you even think her name, you die slow. Understand?" Riordan choked out a nod. Vince released him. Riordan slid down the wall, gasping. "Tell your boss," Vince continued, "if anyone from your crew or any crew comes within a block of this building tonight, I'll burn every warehouse you own from here to Quincy. And I'll make sure you watch." The 3 men backed away slowly, then turned and disappeared into the night. Vince stood there, breathing hard. The violence had been quick, contained no blood, no witnesses, but it left a sour taste. He had spent years telling himself the life was necessary. Now staring at his own trembling hands, he wondered if it had only ever been an excuse to stay numb. He returned inside. In the private room, Lily had fallen asleep, curled in the corner, coat still wrapped around her, Bucky tucked under her chin. Joey had draped a soft throw blanket over her legs. He looked up as Vince entered. "She ate most of the soup," Joey said quietly. Fell asleep mid-sentence. Vince knelt beside her, watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. The bruise on her cheek looked darker in the lamplight, ugly proof of every night she had endured alone. He reached out slowly, carefully, and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. His touch was feather-light, reverent. Inside him, the conflict raged fiercer than ever. Love burned bright, and merciless love for this child he had failed before she was even born. Remorse clawed deeper remorse for every year lost, every cold night she suffered while he lived in comfort. Guilt threatened to drown him. But beneath it all, something new flickered. Determination. Fierce. Unbreakable. Never again. He stayed there, kneeling on the hardwood floor beside his sleeping daughter long after Joey left. The city moved on outside. Deals were made, debts collected, power shifted in shadowed rooms. But in that quiet room, Vincent Callahan made a silent vow. He would protect her, heal her, give her the life she had been denied, and he would tear down anyone that tried to take her from him again. The Harbor Grill had closed for the night. The main dining room lay dark and silent, chandeliers dimmed to faint golden pinpricks, white tablecloths folded away, chairs pushed neatly under tables. Only the private corridor at the back remained softly lit, a single wall sconce outside Lily's room, casting long shadows across polished hardwood. The city outside continued its restless pulse, distant sirens, the low rumble of late-night delivery trucks on Atlantic Avenue, the occasional horn from a taxi, impatient at a light. But inside these walls, time had slowed to the rhythm of a child's shallow breathing. Lily had not moved from the corner all night. She slept fitfully, curled into the tightest ball her small body could manage. Vincent's overcoat still draped over her like a shield. Every few minutes, her shoulders jerked a tiny involuntary flinch, as if even in dreams someone raised a hand. Bucky remained clutched against her chest, one frayed paw pressed to her cheek. Her face in sleep looked impossibly young and impossibly old at once. Vincent sat on the floor 3 feet away, back against the opposite wall, knees drawn up, forearms resting on them. He had not moved in hours. His tailored shirt was rumpled now, sleeves still rolled, the top button undone. Exhaustion carved deep lines around his eyes, but sleep would not come. Every time he closed them, he saw Sarah's face, gentle, trusting, pleading with him not to leave. He saw the hospital report he had never read because he had been too afraid to know. He saw Lily's bruises layered over memories he had buried under 20 years of power and control. The guilt had become a living thing inside him, clawing, relentless, tearing at muscle and sinew until every breath ached. I could have found her. I could have looked. One phone call, one drive back to that old apartment building. Instead, I chose the life. Chose the money. Chose numbness. Love burned beneath the remorse, fierce, protective, almost violent in its intensity. It terrified him. He had spent decades teaching himself that attachment was weakness, that caring meant vulnerability enemies could exploit. Yet here he sat, unable to leave this sleeping child's side, ready to set the entire city ablaze if anyone tried to harm her again. A soft creak sounded from the corridor. Joey appeared in the doorway, carrying a small insulated mug and a folded blanket. He paused when he saw Vince on the floor. "Thought you might want coffee," Joey whispered. "Decaf. You look like hell." Vince did not look up. "She's still asleep." Joey set the mug on the floor beside him. "She stirred once. Asked for the tall man. Didn't know if she meant you." Vince's throat closed. He nodded once. Joey hesitated. Marcus called. Those Dorchester boys came back. Parked 2 blocks down this time. Watching. Not moving yet. Vince's eyes hardened. Let them watch. If they step closer, they don't leave upright. Joey nodded and left quietly. Vincent picked up the mug. The warmth seeped into his palms. He stared at Lily, her thin wrists, the way her ribs showed, even beneath the heavy coat, the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many nights spent awake listening for footsteps. The disparity struck him again, brutal and unrelenting. His world of heated leather seats, private security details, bank accounts with more zeros than most people saw in lifetimes, and hers of cardboard shelters, overflowing dumpsters nights. When the wind was so cold it stole breath from lungs already, starved of air. He set the mug down untouched. Lily stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, wide, disoriented. For a heartbeat, panic flashed across her face. Then she saw him. Recognition settled slowly, replacing fear with something softer, more uncertain. "You're still here," she whispered. Vincent nodded. "I said I'd stay." She studied him, searching for the lie, the cruelty, finding none. Slowly she uncurled just enough to sit up straighter. The coat slipped from one shoulder. She tugged it back up immediately, as if afraid to lose its protection. Are you going to send me away?" Her voice was so small it barely carried. Vincent felt the question like a blade between his ribs. "No, Lily. Never." She blinked. Confusion clouded her eyes. "But everyone sends me away. When I'm too much trouble. When I cry. When I'm bad." "You're not bad," he said quietly, fiercely. "You've never been bad." Lily looked down at Bucky, her fingers twisted in the bear's worn fur. "That's what they all said. Before." Vincent's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The urge to find every person who had ever hurt her surged so violently he tasted blood where he bit the inside of his cheek. But he kept his voice steady. They were wrong. Silence stretched between them, thick, fragile, full of things neither knew how to say. Then Lily spoke again, barely audible. "My tummy hurts." Vincent moved slowly, carefully closer. Not touching, just near enough that she could feel his presence. The doctor said, "We have to go slow with food, but I can get you something small. Crackers. A little milk. Whatever you want." Lily hesitated. Then, tiny trembling, she nodded. Vincent rose, walked to the door, called softly for Joey. Minutes later, Joey returned with a small plate, saltine crackers, a glass of whole milk warmed just enough, and a single banana sliced into careful rounds. He set it on the floor between them and retreated without a word. Vincent sat again, this time a little closer. He took one cracker, broke it in half, offered her the larger piece. Lily stared at it, then at him. Then slowly she reached out. Her fingers brushed his. She did not pull away. She nibbled the edge. The cracker crumbled. She caught the pieces carefully in her palm, as if afraid to waste even a crumb. Vincent watched her eat each tiny bite, deliberate, reverent. Love swelled in his chest until it hurt to contain. This child, his child, had been reduced to hoarding crumbs, yet here she sat accepting food from his hand. The trust, fragile as glass, pierced him deeper than any knife ever had. Outside the night grew colder. Marcus texted, 3 men now, one with binoculars. They're testing us. Vincent typed back without looking away from Lily. If they cross the line, end it. No witnesses. He set the phone down. Lily finished the crackers, drank half the milk. Her eyes grew heavy again. "Daddy," she whispered, then froze. Horror flashed across her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." Vincent's heart stopped. She thought he would hit her. For a word. He leaned forward slowly, carefully. "You can call me whatever feels right, Lily. Whatever makes you feel safe." Tears welled in her eyes. One slipped free. "I never had a daddy." "Not really." Vincent reached out, hesitant, brushed the tear away with his thumb. "You do now." She stared at him, shock, confusion, a dawning hope so fragile it might shatter. Then slowly she leaned forward, just enough that her forehead rested against his chest. Not a full embrace, not yet, but surrender, trust. Vincent froze. Then carefully he wrapped one arm around her shoulders, held her as if she were made of spun glass. Inside him the storm reached its peak. Love burned white-hot. Remorse screamed. Guilt tore at him with claws. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve her." Yet he could not let go. He held her while she drifted back to sleep. Later, when her breathing steadied, he carried her to the sofa, laid her down gently, tucked the blanket around her, sat beside her on the floor back against the couch, one hand resting near hers. He did not sleep. He watched over her the way he should have from the beginning, and in the quiet hours before dawn, while the city slept and enemies circled, Vincent Callahan made another silent vow. He would dismantle anything that had ever hurt her, starting with himself. Morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of the private room, turning the cream walls the color of weak tea. The harbor grill would not open for another few hours. The building held its breath in the hush before the day began. Delivery trucks rumbled past on the street below their engines, a distant growl, while inside only the soft tick of a wall clock and the occasional creak of settling wood broke the stillness. Lily had woken before dawn. She had not moved from the sofa where Vincent had placed her the night before. The blanket Joey left remained tucked around her legs, but she had pulled Vincent's overcoat back over her shoulders like a cape. Bucky sat in her lap, one paw resting on her knee as if keeping watch. Her eyes, large, shadowed, tracked every small sound, the faint clatter of pans from the kitchen where Joey had already arrived, the murmur of Marcus speaking low into his phone in the corridor, the soft footfalls of a server polishing silverware in the main room. She had not spoken since waking, simply watched, waited, the way children who had learned too early that safety was temporary learned to wait. Vincent had not slept. He sat in the same spot on the floor beside the sofa, elbows on knees, hands loosely clasped. His shirt was creased beyond saving dark circles carved beneath his eyes. Exhaustion pulled at him, but it was nothing compared to the war inside. Every time Lily shifted, every time her gaze flicked to him and then away, the guilt surged anew, hot acid, relentless. She woke up alone in this room, and the first thing she did was look for the exit. Because of me, because I wasn't there for 6 years. He felt the love for her now like a physical wound, sharp, burning, impossible to ignore. It had ignited the moment he saw her in the snow, and had only grown fiercer with every hour. He wanted to wrap her in every comfort his money could buy, soft beds, warm meals, doctors on call 24 hours, but he knew better. Trust could not be purchased. It had to be earned, slowly, painfully, the way a frozen hand regains feeling first, pins and needles, then fire. Lily's stomach growled loud in the quiet room. She pressed both hands to it, cheeks flushing with shame. The sound was small, pitiful, humiliating. She ducked her head, shoulders, hunching inward as if trying to disappear. Vincent spoke softly. Hungry, she nodded once, tiny, hesitant. He rose carefully, walked to the door, called down the corridor in a low voice. Joey appeared moments later with another tray, plain oatmeal in a small porcelain bowl, a splash of warm milk, a few slices of banana arranged in a careful circle, a glass of water. Nothing rich, nothing that would overwhelm her shrunken stomach. Joey set it on the low table and retreated without a word. Vincent carried the tray back, set it beside her on the sofa cushion. Then he sat on the floor again, closer this time, but still giving her space. "You don't have to eat it all," he said quietly. "Just a little. Whatever you can." Lily stared at the oatmeal. Steam rose in delicate spirals. The smell was gentle, comforting in a way that made her throat tighten. She lifted the spoon with trembling fingers, took the smallest bite, swallowed. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second, as if the warmth was a memory she had almost forgotten. Vincent watched her every careful movement, every flicker of expression. Love and remorse twisted together until they felt like the same emotion. She eats like someone who expects the food to vanish, because it always has. When she finished half the bowl, she set the spoon down, really looked at him for the first time without flinching away immediately. "Why are you being nice to me?" she whispered. Vincent felt the question land like a punch. He took a slow breath. "Because you deserve it." Lily's brow furrowed. "No one ever thinks that." He leaned forward slightly, still careful. "I do." Silence again. Thick, heavy with things unsaid. Then Lily spoke, voice so small it nearly broke him. "I think I'm bad. That's why things happen." Vincent's heart seized. "You're not bad, Lily. You've never been bad." She shook her head slowly. Tears welled but did not fall. "My mommy died when I was born. The doctors said there was too much blood. Daddy said it wasn't my fault, but I think it was. If I hadn't been born, Mommy would still be here." Vincent felt the words like knives turning in his gut. He had known somewhere deep buried that Sarah had died in childbirth. He had never asked for details, had never wanted to know. Now the truth sat between them, raw and bleeding. He reached out slowly and covered her small hand with his. She did not pull away. "That wasn't your fault," he said, voice rough with emotion. He could no longer hide. "None of it was your fault." Lily looked up at him, eyes searching, desperate for the lie she expected to find. Finding only truth. "My daddy died too," she continued, voice cracking. "When I was 4. Something heavy fell on him at work. After that, they sent me to Aunt Karen. She was nice at first. Then she married Victor." The name landed like a stone in still water. Vincent's jaw clenched so hard he tasted blood. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "Victor didn't like me. He said I cost too much, ate too much, took up too much space. He hurt me. A lot. Burned me with cigarettes when I spilled things. Locked me in the basement when I cried. Hit me with his belt until I couldn't stand up." Each word carved another scar into Vincent's chest. Rage, cold, lethal, mixed with remorse so deep it threatened to drown him. "This happened to my daughter. While I built walls and counted power like currency, Lily's tears fell freely now, silent the way she had learned to cry so no one would hear. I tried to be good. I really did. But it never worked." Vincent moved slowly, carefully, until he knelt in front of her. He took both her hands in his. They were so small, so cold. "Listen to me," he said, voice low and fierce. "None of that was your fault. Not one single thing. You were a child. You still are. And what happened to you? It was wrong. It was evil. And I swear to you on everything I am, no one will ever hurt you like that again." Lily stared at him, searching, waiting. Vincent took the deepest breath of his life. Lily, I knew your mommy. A long time ago. Her name was Sarah. She was kind, gentle. She loved books and children and believed the world could be better if people tried hard enough. Lily's eyes widened. I loved her, Vincent continued. But I was afraid. Afraid my life would ruin hers. So I left. I never knew. I never knew she was going to have you. The confession hung between them, naked, trembling. Lily's breath hitched. You're my real daddy, Vincent nodded once. Tears burned behind his own eyes, tears he had not shed in decades. Yes. I'm so sorry, Lily. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I failed you. I failed your mother. But I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again. Lily stared at him, shock, confusion, hope warring across her small face. Then slowly her lower lip trembled. Tears spilled over. Vincent opened his arms. She launched herself forward, thin arms wrapping around his neck, face buried in his shoulder. Sobs shook her entire body, loud, raw, the kind she had never allowed herself before. Vincent held her tight but careful, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her narrow back. He rocked her gently, whispering over and over, I've got you. I've got you. You're safe. You're home. Outside, Marcus appeared in the doorway, face grim. Boss. Dorchester crew just rolled up again. 4 cars this time, armed. They're blocking the street. Vincent did not loosen his hold on Lily. His voice when he spoke was ice over steel. Tell them if they don't clear the block in 60 seconds, I'll make last night look like a handshake. Marcus nodded and vanished. Lily clung tighter. Don't go, she whispered against his neck. Vincent pressed his lips to the top of her head. I'm not going anywhere. He held her while the sobs slowly quieted. Held her while her breathing evened. Held her while the world outside tried once more to press in with its violence and greed. And in that quiet, condensed stillness, while his daughter slept against his chest for the first time, Vincent Callahan felt the last of his old walls crack wide open. Love won. Remorse remained, but for the first time in decades, something stronger rose beneath them both. Hope. The Harbor Grill opened for lunch at 11 o'clock that morning, October 2025. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, turning the polished brass fixtures to liquid gold and catching motes of dust that drifted lazily above white linen tables. The scent of fresh-baked sourdough rolls mingled with the rich aroma of simmering beef stock from the kitchen. Waitstaff in crisp black uniforms moved with practiced grace, setting out heavy silverware and crystal water glasses for the early crowd, businessmen in tailored suits, tourists consulting maps of the Freedom Trail, a few regulars who came for Joey's famous clam chowder. In the private room at the back, the atmosphere remained hushed, insulated from the growing hum beyond the door. Lily sat on the edge of the sofa, feet dangling several inches above the floor. She had finally allowed Vincent to help her change into clean clothes Joey had found in the Lost and Found, a soft gray sweatshirt, 2 sizes too big, fleece-lined leggings, thick wool socks that swallowed her small feet. The overcoat lay folded neatly beside her. She kept one hand resting on it as though afraid it might vanish if she looked away too long. Bucky sat in her lap, freshly brushed by Joey's careful hands, the missing eye now covered with a small black button Joey had sewn on with black thread. She looked healthier already, color in her cheeks, less hollow around the eyes, but the fragility remained. Every sudden noise from the dining room made her shoulders jump. She ate slowly from a small bowl of oatmeal Joey had brought earlier, spooning tiny bites, chewing with deliberate care, as though afraid the food might disappear mid-swallow. Vincent sat across from her in one of the deep leather chairs, elbows on knees, watching her with an intensity that bordered on reverence. He had showered in the upstairs apartment he kept above the restaurant. Quick, cold, mechanical, but had not bothered with fresh clothes. The same rumpled shirt clung to him, sleeves rolled collar open. Exhaustion etched deeper lines around his mouth, but his eyes never left her. The love inside him had become a furnace, constant, consuming, burning away every other thought. Every time she lifted the spoon, every time she glanced at him with that tentative, searching look, the remorse surged hotter. 6 years, 6 birthdays, 6 winters of cold she should never have known. The guilt felt like shards of glass lodged beneath his ribs. Every breath pushed them deeper. Lily set the spoon down. Half the oatmeal remained. She looked at him, timid, polite voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. For the food. And the clothes. And everything. Vincent's throat tightened. You don't have to thank me, Lily. Ever. She nodded slowly, then hesitant. Can I ask you something, anything? Why do you look so sad when you look at me? The question struck him like a physical blow. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles blanched. Because I should have been here sooner, he said quietly. Because I left your mother when she needed me most. Because I didn't know about you. And even if I had, I might have been too afraid to do the right thing. Lily's brow furrowed. Confusion clouded her eyes. But you're here now. I am, he said, voice rough. And I'm never leaving again. A small, fragile smile touched her lips, the first real one he had seen. It pierced him straight through the heart. Before he could speak again, the door opened. Marcus stepped inside, face grim, phone still in hand. Boss. Victor Kane just walked through the front door, demanding to see his niece. Says he has legal papers. He's loud, making a scene. Vincent rose slowly. Every muscle coiled tight. Rage, cold, lethal, flooded through him, but he kept his voice even for Lily's sake. Keep him in the foyer. Don't let him pass the hostess stand. Marcus nodded and left. Lily went rigid. The spoon clattered against the bowl. Color drained from her face until she looked gray. He found me, she whispered. Horror crept into her voice, quiet, deadened the tone of a child who had always known this moment would come. Vincent knelt in front of her instantly. He's not getting anywhere near you. Lily shook her head, small, frantic. He always finds me. He always takes me back. He says I belong to him, that I'm his property, that no one else wants damaged goods. Vincent felt something snap inside him, clean through. Love and fury fused into something unbreakable. You belong to no one, he said, voice low and fierce. You are mine, my daughter, and no one will ever take you from me again. Lily stared at him, shock, confusion, a dawning hope warring with terror. Then she lunged forward, thin arms wrapping around his neck. She buried her face in his shoulder and clung. Vincent held her tight, protective. One hand cradled the back of her head, the other wrapped around her narrow back. He felt her heart hammering against his chest, wild, terrified. I've got you, he whispered. I've got you. Outside, the confrontation had already begun. Victor Kane stood at the hostess stand, tall, thin, slicked-back hair, cheap suit that strained across narrow shoulders. His smile was all teeth charm, masking something rotten underneath. I'm here for my niece, he announced loudly enough for nearby tables to turn. Lily Carter, 6 years old. She ran away from home. I have custody papers. Everything legal. The hostess, young, nervous, glanced toward the corridor. Victor leaned in. Look, sweetheart, I don't want trouble. Just give me the girl and I'll be on my way. Marcus appeared behind him, 6'4", 240 pounds of quiet menace. Two more of Vincent's men flanked the doors. Victor's smile faltered. Vincent stepped into the foyer, Lily still clinging to him, face hidden against his neck. He carried her as though she weighed nothing. Victor's eyes locked on her. Greed flashed bright, ugly. There she is, he said, stepping forward. Come here, sweetheart. Uncle Victor's here to take you home. Lily whimpered, small, broken sound. Her fingers dug into Vincent's shirt. Vincent's voice cut through the room like a blade. You don't take another step. Victor stopped. You can't keep her from me. I have legal rights. Foster care payments don't stop just because she ran off. And there's insurance money from her father held in trust until she's 18. I'm her guardian. Vincent's eyes went flat, dangerous. You call her property one more time and you won't leave this building walking. Victor laughed, nervous, forced. You're threatening me, in your own restaurant. With witnesses, Vincent shifted Lily to one arm. With the other, he gestured toward the door. Get out. Victor's face, twisted charm gone, replaced by something darker. You think you can just take what's mine. I'll be back with police, with lawyers, with court orders. She's worth money to me. And I always collect what's mine. He turned on his heel, paused at the door, looked back. You'll regret this, Callahan. The door swung shut behind him. Silence fell thick, electric. Vincent looked down at Lily. Her face was buried against his shoulder, body trembling. He's gone, Vincent said softly. For now. Lily lifted her head just enough to look at him. Tears streaked her cheeks. He'll come back, she whispered. He always does. Vincent pressed his forehead gently to hers. Not this time. He carried her back to the private room, settled her on the sofa, tucked the blanket around her, sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. She leaned into him, small, trusting. Exhausted, Vincent wrapped one arm around her shoulders, held her while she drifted toward sleep again. Inside him the storm raged, fiercer than ever. Love burned, passionate, protective, all-consuming. Remorse clawed, deeper, sharper, merciless. Rage coiled, cold, lethal, waiting. And beneath it all, resolve. Victor Kane had just declared war. Vincent Callahan intended to win. The afternoon of October 2025 carried the deceptive warmth of a Boston autumn day that promised summer but delivered winter's edge. Sunlight slanted low across Boston Common, turning the grass to pale gold and catching the last crimson leaves still clinging to the maples. Families strolled the paths, children chased pigeons near the frog pond, couples sat on benches sharing coffee from paper cups. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts from a vendor's cart, and the faint, clean bite of coming frost. Vincent had brought Lily outside for the first time since she arrived at the Harbor Grill. Not far, just across the street to the Common, a small outing meant to show her the world could hold gentle things. Joey walked with them carrying a paper bag of warm apple cider donuts dusted with cinnamon sugar. Marcus shadowed at a discreet distance, two more men blending into the crowd, eyes scanning constantly. Lily held Vincent's hand. Her fingers were small and cold inside his much larger palm. She wore the new red coat he had bought that morning, puffy, down-filled, the kind of coat children in television commercials wore while laughing in snow. It still smelled faintly of the store, clean fabric and newness. Her sneakers, white with Velcro straps, were laced tight. Bucky peeked from the crook of her arm, freshly cleaned the black button eye Joey had sewn on, glinting in the light. She walked slowly, looking at everything with wide, wondering eyes. The swan boats on the pond, the tall statue of George Washington, a squirrel darting across the grass with a nut clamped in its jaws. Each sight seemed to surprise her, as though she had forgotten the world contained colors that were not gray. Vincent watched her face more than the path. Every time her gaze lit with curiosity, every time a tiny smile tugged at her mouth, the love inside him flared brighter, fierce, protective, almost painful. Yet beneath it, the remorse gnawed deeper, relentless. She should have seen all this years ago. With me. Safe, warm, loved. The guilt felt like a hand around his throat, squeezing tighter with every innocent wonder she discovered. Joey handed her a donut. "Careful, kiddo. They're still warm." Lily took it with both hands, took the smallest bite. Her eyes closed in pure, startled pleasure. Cinnamon sugar dusted her lips. For a moment she looked like any other 6-year-old on an autumn afternoon. Then the black van appeared. It came around the corner from Beacon Street, two fast tires squealing against the curb. Windowless, matte black. No plates visible. It jumped the low curb, skidded across the grass, and stopped 20 feet away. The side door slid open with a metallic rasp. Two men jumped out, large hooded sweatshirts, faces shadowed. They moved with purpose. No hesitation. No words. Joey reacted first. 20 years in kitchens and 20 more years in Vincent's world had taught him instinct. He shoved Lily behind him. "Run, Lily, run," but Lily's legs locked. Her eyes fixed on the open van door, black, hungry, endless. Memories crashed over her basements, locked doors, hands reaching in the dark. Her breath stopped. The donut fell from her fingers, rolling into the grass. One man lunged for Joey. The chef swung hard, practiced. His fist connected with the man's jaw. A dull crack. The man staggered. The second man was faster. He drove a knee into Joey's stomach. Joey doubled over, gasping. A second blow caught him across the face. Blood bloomed from his nose. He dropped to his knees on the cold grass. Uncle Joey, Lily's scream, tore through the quiet afternoon, high primal shattering. Vincent was already moving. He scooped Lily into his arms in one fluid motion, turned, ran toward the nearest tree cover. Marcus and the other two men materialized from the crowd, coordinated, silent, deadly, efficient. Marcus hit the first man from behind a chokehold that dropped him in seconds. The second man spun, saw the wall of muscle closing in, and bolted. He did not get far. One of Vincent's men intercepted him, slammed him face first against the van's side. The metallic thud echoed across the common. The entire thing lasted less than 30 seconds. Joey struggled to his knees, blood streaming down his chin. "Lily. Is she?" Vincent knelt beside him, still holding Lily tight against his chest. "She's safe." Lily trembled violently, full body shudders that rattled her small frame. Her face pressed into Vincent's neck. Tears soaked his collar. She made no sound now, just silent, wrenching sobs. Marcus crouched nearby. "We have them," both restrained. One had a phone text message chain. Orders from Victor Kane. "Grab the girl. Bring her back. Don't damage the merchandise, she's worth more intact." Vincent's arms tightened around Lily. Rage, white-hot blinding, surged through him, but he kept his voice steady for her sake. "Take them to the warehouse," he told Marcus quietly. "I'll deal with them later." Marcus nodded. His men dragged the two would-be kidnappers away, quick, discreet, disappearing into the crowd before anyone could fully process what had happened. Vincent stood slowly, carried Lily toward the edge of the common, away from prying eyes. Sat on a bench beneath a maple tree whose leaves still clung red and gold. He settled her in his lap, small, shaking, fragile. She clung to him, fingers knotted in his shirt face, hidden against his chest. "They tried to take me," she whispered, voice muffled, broken. "Just like before." Vincent rocked her gently. One hand stroked her hair, slow, soothing circles. "They didn't. We stopped them. You're safe." Joey limped over, nose swollen, blood crusted on his upper lip. He lowered himself onto the bench beside them with a groan. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked Lily. She peeked out just enough to see him. Fresh tears welled. You got hurt. Because of me? Joey shook his head, slow, careful. Not because of you. Because some people are monsters. And monsters don't win today. Lily looked up at Vincent, eyes, huge, searching. You came for me. Vincent pressed his forehead gently to hers. Always. The word carried the weight of every promise he had ever broken, and every one he would now keep. Inside him, the conflict raged fiercer than ever. Love burned passionate, all-consuming, ready to destroy anything that threatened her. Remorse clawed deeper. She almost lost everything again because I wasn't fast enough, strong enough there soon enough. Rage coiled, cold, lethal patient, waiting for the moment he could face Victor Kane and make him understand exactly what it meant to hurt what belonged to Vincent Callahan. But beneath it all, stronger than the rest, resolve. He lifted Lily's chin gently, met her eyes. No one will ever take you from me, he said, quiet, fierce, unbreakable. You are my daughter. My family. And family stays together. Lily stared at him, shock, giving way to something softer, deeper. Trust. Real. Fragile but growing. She leaned forward slowly, pressed her small forehead to his again. Okay, Daddy, she whispered. The word landed like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Vincent closed his eyes, held her tighter, and in that quiet, condensed moment, while the city moved on around them, while enemies plotted in shadows, while autumn leaves drifted down like slow red snow, he felt the last remnants of his old life crack wide open. He was no longer just the man who survived. He was a father. And nothing, not money, not power, not the entire criminal underworld would take that from him again. The warehouse stood at the far edge of the South Boston Marine Industrial Park. Rusted steel girders, cracked concrete floors, stained with decades of oil and saltwater windows high and broken, so that shafts of late afternoon light sliced through the gloom like pale knives. October 2025. Wind off the harbor, rattled loose panels in the roof, and carried the faint metallic tang of the sea. Inside, the air was colder than outside, still heavy smelling of damp concrete and old machinery. Victor Kane stood in the center of the empty space beneath a single, hanging industrial bulb. His hands were bound behind his back with thick zip ties that had already cut red lines into his wrists. His cheap suit jacket hung crooked one sleeve, torn at the shoulder from the rough handling. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt despite the chill. His eyes, small, calculating, darted, constantly searching the shadows where Vincent's men stood in a loose circle, silent, expressionless, the kind of men who had long ago stopped flinching at whatever happened in places like this. Victor had been here for nearly 2 hours. No one had spoken to him. No one had explained. They simply watched, patient, inevitable. The silence was its own punishment. The heavy steel door at the far end groaned open. Vincent stepped inside. He wore no coat, only the same dark shirt from the morning sleeves rolled to the elbows, forearms corded with tension. His face was calm, too, calm, the kind of calm that made the temperature in the room seem to drop another 10 degrees. He walked slowly, deliberately, boots echoing on the concrete. Each step measured, unhurried. Victor's Adam's apple bobbed. Callahan. Look, this is all a misunderstanding. I just want the girl back. She's my responsibility. Legal papers, foster payments, everything above board. Vincent stopped 10 feet away, said nothing, simply looked at him. Victor tried again, voice rising, cracking at the edges. We can work something out. You're a businessman. I'm a businessman. Everything has a price. Name it. Vincent tilted his head slightly. What I want, he said quietly, is for you to stop talking. Victor's mouth snapped shut. Vincent reached into his back pocket, pulled out a thin folder, held it up for a moment, letting the weight of it build, then tossed it onto the floor between them. Papers scattered, photographs, bank statements, medical reports, text message, screenshots, printed in stark black and white. That, Vincent said, is your life. Every lie, every dollar you stole, every mark you left on her skin. Victor stared at the papers. His face went from pale to ashen. Vincent began to circle him, slow, predatory. 3 years of foster care fraud. $800 a month meant for food, clothes, school supplies. You funneled it into gambling debts, liquor, your own pockets. She went hungry while you ate steak. Victor opened his mouth. Vincent's voice cut him off, soft, lethal. Don't. He kept circling. Previous domestic violence conviction. Your first wife. You beat her for 2 years before she fled 3 states away. Changed her name. Still wakes up screaming some nights. Victor flinched. And then there's the $200,000 you owe the McGuire crew, Vincent continued. They've been patient, generous even. But patience has limits. Victor's knees began to shake. Vincent stopped directly in front of him, leaned in close enough that Victor could smell the faint cedar of his aftershave. But all of that, he said, voice dropping to a whisper, is nothing compared to what you did to my daughter. Victor's breath hitched. You burned cigarettes into her arms. 7 times. Slowly, while she begged. You locked her in a basement for days. No light, no food, no water, until her voice gave out. You whipped her back until the skin split and scarred. You broke her ribs and never took her to a doctor. You made her believe she was worthless. Made her apologize for breathing. Victor's legs buckled. 2 of Vincent's men caught his arms, held him upright. Vincent straightened, and when that wasn't enough, you tried to sell her. Victor's eyes went wide, wild, panicked. Vincent pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. A text message chain appeared, projected large against the far wall by a small portable device one of his men held. Victor's own words glowed in cold white text. Grab the girl. Bring her back. Don't damage the merchandise. She's worth more intact. Vincent let the words hang. Then quietly, merchandise. Victor began to sob ugly choking sounds. Vincent crouched, so his eyes were level with Victor's. Sign the papers. Relinquish all rights. Confess everything. Leave Boston tonight. Never come back. Never speak her name. Or, I hand you to the Maguires, and they won't offer you a plane ticket. Victor nodded frantically, tears streaming. I'll sign anything, please. Vincent stood, gestured. One of his men brought a metal table, a pen, the documents. Victor signed, hands shaking so badly the pen skittered across the page. Page after page, relinquishment, confession, notarized copies already prepared by Vincent's lawyer, who waited silently in the shadows. When the last signature dried, Vincent took the folder, closed it. Then, almost gently, you'll be on a plane to Mexico City in 3 hours. One-way ticket, $500 cash. Disappear. Victor nodded, broken, diminished. Vincent turned to leave. Behind him, one of his own men, Patrick "Paddy" O'Malley, his second in command for 15 years, stepped forward. Paddy's voice was low. Boss, we need to talk. Alone. Vincent paused, looked back. Paddy's face was gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Speak. Paddy swallowed. Victor wasn't working alone. The trafficking ring he fed girls into. I knew about it. I took a cut. Small. Just enough to keep the Maguires off our backs. I thought it was just business. The warehouse went utterly still. Vincent turned fully, slowly. Paddy took a step back. I didn't know it was your kid, boss. I swear. I never would have. Vincent moved fast, controlled. One hand shot out, caught Paddy by the throat, lifted him onto his toes, slammed him against a rusted steel beam. The clang echoed. You knew, Vincent said, voice soft, deadly. You knew children were being sold. You took money from it. And you stood in my house. Ate at my table. Called me brother. Paddy choked out. I'm sorry. Vincent's other hand drew the pistol from his waistband. Pressed the barrel beneath Paddy's chin. For a long moment, eternal, the only sound was Paddy's ragged breathing. Then Vincent spoke quiet, final. You betrayed my daughter. You betrayed me. He pulled the trigger. The shot cracked, sharp, deafening. Paddy slumped. Blood bloomed dark on the concrete. Vincent stepped back, hand steady, face blank. The other men did not flinch. Vincent looked down at the body, then at Victor, who had collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Get him to the airport, Vincent said, voice flat. Now. He walked out without another word. Outside, the wind had picked up sharp, salt-laced. Vincent stood beside his Escalade, staring at the black water of the harbor. Lights from the city reflected in broken shards across the surface. Inside him, the storm had reached hurricane force. Love for Lily burned white-hot, unbreakable. Remorse screamed louder than ever. My own house was rotten. My own brother sold children. How many others suffered because I refused to look? Rage coiled tighter, colder, more lethal. But beneath it, something new. Clarity. He could no longer pretend the life he had built was separate from the evil it touched. The rot had grown inside his own walls. He pulled out his phone, dialed Marcus. Clean up the warehouse. Then call every crew head. Tell them the trafficking stops tonight. Anyone still running girls answers to me personally. He ended the call, looked back toward the city, toward the harbor grill, toward the small private room where his daughter waited. He had built an empire on fear. Now he would tear part of it down with his bare hands. For her, because love, real love, demanded more than protection. It demanded justice. Even when the cost was everything. The evening of October 2025 settled over Boston with deceptive gentleness. Streetlights along Atlantic Avenue glowed soft amber, reflecting in shallow puddles left from an earlier shower. The harbor grill's windows spilled warm golden light onto the sidewalk, framing silhouettes of diners, lifting wine glasses and laughing over plates of seared scallops and garlic mashed potatoes. Inside the private room at the back, the air still carried the faint sweetness of apple cider donuts from earlier, now cold and forgotten on a side table. Lily sat cross-legged on the sofa, wrapped in a thick chenille throw Joey had brought from his own apartment. She wore the same oversized gray sweatshirt and fleece leggings from the morning, but someone, probably one of Vincent's quiet assistants, had added a soft knit hat with a tiny pom-pom pale lavender pulled low over her ears. Bucky rested in the crook of her arm. She had been coloring with a small set of crayons Joey found in a drawer, bright waxy lines forming a house with a red roof, a tall figure beside a small one, and a teddy bear sitting between them. At the bottom, in careful, uneven letters, "My family." Vincent stood at the window, back to the room, hands in his pockets. He had changed into a fresh black shirt, crisp tailored, but the tension in his shoulders had not eased. The warehouse confrontation played behind his eyes on an endless loop. Patty's face in the moment before the shot, the wet sound of the body hitting concrete, Victor's broken sobs as they dragged him away. Every decision he had made in the last 24 hours felt heavier than the last. The empire he had built to survive now felt like chains he had forged himself. Lily looked up from her drawing. "Daddy," the words still landed like sunlight on frozen ground. Vincent turned, softened instantly. "Yeah, sweetheart." She held up the paper, shy, hopeful. "I made this. For you?" Vincent crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt in front of her, took the drawing with careful fingers, studied it, really studied it. The tall figure had dark hair and gray eyes. The small figure had dark hair too and a red coat. The teddy bear wore a tiny smile. His throat closed. "It's beautiful, Lily." She beamed, small, fragile, radiant. "Really, really." He reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm going to keep it forever." Lily's smile widened, then faltered. Are you going away tonight, Vincent?" Shook his head. "Not far, just downstairs for a little while. Marcus needs to talk to me about some things." Her fingers tightened around Bucky. "Promise you'll come back, I promise." He leaned forward, pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head, lingered there, breathing in the clean, small scent of her hair. Love surged through him, fierce, protective, almost violent in its tenderness. Beneath it, remorse gnawed deeper than ever. "I almost lost her today, because of choices I made long before she was born." He stood, walked to the door, paused, looked back. "Stay here with Joey, okay? He's bringing dinner soon." Lily nodded solemnly. Vincent stepped into the corridor, closed the door softly behind him. The hallway felt colder than the room. He walked toward the service stairs, head down, mind already turning to the next move. The McGuire crew would retaliate. They always did. But he had made his choice. The trafficking stopped tonight, even if it cost him everything. He never heard the rifle. The first shot came from across the street, high angle silenced. The bullet punched through the plate glass window of the private dining room behind him, crossed the corridor in a silent line, and struck Vincent high in the left shoulder. The impact spun him. He crashed against the wall, hard blood blooming dark across his shirt. Inside the room, Lily screamed. The second shot came a heartbeat later, lower, aimed for center mass. It grazed Vincent's side as he dropped, tearing fabric and flesh. Pain exploded white-hot across his ribs. Lily scrambled off the sofa. The throw blanket tangled around her legs. She stumbled, fell, crawled toward the door. Daddy Joey burst in from the kitchen corridor, apron still tied, face ashen. "Lily, stay back." She did not listen. Vincent tried to stand. His left arm hung useless. Blood soaked his sleeve, dripped steadily onto the hardwood. He pressed his right hand to the wound at his side, warm, slick. Vision tunneled. Lily reached him first. She threw herself against him, small hands pressing over his, trying to stop the bleeding. Her fingers were tiny, trembling, slippery with his blood. Don't go," she sobbed. "Please don't go." Vincent sank to one knee, pulled her close with his good arm, shielding her with his body. "I'm okay," he lied, voice rough fading. "I'm okay, sweetheart." Joey dropped beside them, ripping off his apron, pressing it to Vincent's side. "Boss, stay with me. Ambulance is coming." Outside, chaos. Marcus and his men had already converged on the sniper's position. Shouts, running footsteps. A third shot never came. Vincent's vision grayed at the edges. Pain throbbed in time with his heartbeat deep consuming. He looked down at Lily, her face streaked with tears and his blood eyes wide with terror. She pressed harder against his wounds, small, determined. "You can't leave me," she whispered, fierce, broken. You promised forever." Vincent cupped her cheek with his good hand, thumb brushing away tears. "I'm not going anywhere," he rasped. "You hear me, I'm staying." Sirens wailed closer, red and blue lights flashing through the broken window. Lily leaned forward, pressed her forehead to his. "I love you, Daddy." The words pierced him deeper than any bullet. Love, pure, selfless burning, flooded through him, drowning remorse, quieting rage. In that moment, everything else fell away, the empire, the betrayals, the blood on his hands. There was only her small, brave, willing to run into danger for him when the world had taught her only to run away. He held her tighter, ignoring the fire in his shoulder, the wet heat spreading across his side. "I love you too," he whispered, voice cracking for the first time in decades. More than anything. Paramedics burst through the door, uniforms, stretchers, urgent voices. Joey moved aside reluctantly. Hands reached for Vincent. Lily refused to let go. One of the medics, a woman with kind eyes, knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, we need to help him. You can ride with us." "Okay." Lily looked at Vincent, searching. He nodded weakly. "Stay with me." She nodded back, small, determined. They lifted him onto the stretcher. Lily climbed up beside him, still holding his hand, still pressing the blood-soaked apron to his side with her other. The ambulance doors closed. Inside the swaying vehicle, sirens screaming, Vincent looked at his daughter. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and blood, but her grip on his hand never wavered. In that moment, blood loss blurring the edges of consciousness, he understood something he had never grasped before. She had saved him. Not from the bullet. From himself. The child he had failed before she was born had just run toward gunfire to keep him alive. Love, overwhelming, redemptive, washed through him like cleansing fire. He squeezed her hand weakly. "Stay with me," he whispered again. Lily leaned close, forehead against his. "Always, Daddy." The ambulance sped through the city lights, flashing sirens howling. Vincent closed his eyes. Not in surrender, in certainty. Whatever came next, hospital beds, surgeries, investigations, the unraveling of everything he had built, he would face it. Because she was here. Because she had chosen him. And because for the first time in his life, he finally understood what it meant to be chosen back. Word count 1,512. The hospital room on the 6th floor of Massachusetts General carried the sterile hush of early morning. October 2025 dawn light slipped between half-closed blinds, painting thin gold bars across white sheets and polished tile. Machines beeped in soft, steady rhythm, heart monitor, IV drip oxygen sensor clipped to a small finger. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, and the coffee someone had left on the rolling tray table. Vincent lay propped against pillows, left shoulder heavily bandaged, right side wrapped in gauze beneath a thin hospital gown. An IV line ran into the back of his hand. His face looked gaunt in the pale light, dark circles beneath his eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, but his gaze remained sharp, fixed on the small figure curled in the chair beside the bed. Lily had refused to leave. She slept now, knees drawn to her chest, head resting on the mattress edge near his hip, one small hand still wrapped around two of his fingers. The lavender knit hat had slipped sideways. Dark hair spilled across the white sheet like spilled ink. Bucky sat propped against her shoulder button, eye watching over them both. Dried blood, his blood still flecked the cuffs of her sweatshirt sleeves. Nurses had tried to clean it off earlier. She had shaken her head fiercely and clutched the fabric tighter. Vincent had not slept. He watched her breathing slow, even trusting, and felt every emotion he had ever tried to bury rise like floodwater against a crumbling dam. Love burned brightest, fierce, redemptive, all-consuming. She had run toward gunfire for him, pressed her tiny hands to his wounds, refused to let Gaucher even when grown men in uniforms tried to pull her away. That single act had rewritten everything inside him. The child he had failed before she drew breath had just saved his life, not with strength, not with power, but with pure, selfless devotion. Beneath the love, remorse clawed deeper than the bullet wounds. She almost lost me because of the life I chose, because of the men I trusted, because I spent years pretending the darkness I lived in wouldn't touch the people I should have protected. Guilt felt physical now, hot iron bands tightening around his ribs with every breath, every heartbeat. Rage simmered beneath both cold, patient, lethal. Patty's betrayal, Victor's cruelty, the McGuire crew's retaliation, the trafficking ring that had operated in shadows he had allowed to exist. Every name, every face, every dollar that had passed through dirty hands now felt like personal treason. And yet something new rose through the storm. Clarity. He could no longer pretend separation existed between his empire and the evil it sheltered. The rot had grown in his own house. He had built walls to keep pain out, and in doing so had kept love out too. Lily stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, sleepy, confused for a heartbeat, then focused on him. Relief flooded her small face. "You're still here," she whispered. Vincent squeezed her fingers gently. "I promised." She sat up slowly, wincing as stiff muscles protested, looked at the bandages, at the IV line, at the machines. Fresh tears welled. "I thought..." Her voice cracked. "I thought you were going to leave me. Like everyone else." Vincent shifted, pain lanced through his shoulder and side, but he ignored it, reached out with his good arm, tucked her against his uninjured side. Never, he said, quiet, fierce. You saved me, Lily. You ran to me when you should have run away. You stayed when everyone else would have left. She pressed her face to his chest, careful of the bandages. I couldn't let you go. You're my daddy. The word simple, certain shattered the last of his defenses. Tears burned behind his own eyes, tears he had not allowed since he was a boy watching his own father walk out for the last time. He let them fall now, silent, unashamed, into her hair. I'm going to change things, he whispered. For you. For us. Lily lifted her head. What things? Everything that hurt you. Everything that could hurt other kids. I've spent too long pretending I couldn't stop it. I was wrong. She studied him, searching, trusting. You're going to make it stop, yes. She nodded once, small, solemn. Okay. A soft knock sounded. Marcus stepped inside, face-drawn suit rumpled from a night without rest. Boss. The Maguires sent word. They want to sit down. Tonight. Warehouse on the waterfront. They know what happened to Patty. They know you're wounded. Vincent's jaw tightened. Tell them I'll be there. Marcus hesitated. You can't go alone. Not like this. I won't. Vincent looked down at Lily. But it ends tonight. Marcus nodded, left quietly. Lily's fingers tightened on his gown. You're going to fight again. Vincent brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Not fight. Finish. There are things I have to make right, so no one ever hurts a child the way you were hurt. Lily's eyes filled again, but this time with something stronger than fear. Pride. Trust. Love. I'll wait here, she whispered, with Bucky. We'll be okay. Vincent pulled her closer, held her while the machines beeped softly, and dawn strengthened outside the window. Later, after doctors checked his wounds, after nurses changed dressings, after Joey arrived with a small stuffed Fenway Park bear as a get-well gift, Vincent made the calls. First to his lawyer, liquidate the offshore accounts tied to the old operations. Transfer clean funds to trusts for children's shelters across the city. Second, to his accountants, sell the protection rackets, the backroom deals, the warehouses used for storage, no one asked questions about. Reinvest in legitimate expansion, more restaurants, community centers, scholarships in Sarah's name. Third, to Marcus, gather every crew head who had ever turned a blind eye. Tell them the rules had changed. Anyone still running girls exploiting kids out. No discussion. No second chances. By evening, he sat in a wheelchair against doctor's orders being pushed toward the private elevator. Lily walked beside him, small hand on the armrest, refusing to let go. At the curb, the black Escalade waited. Marcus opened the door. Vincent looked down at his daughter. I'll be back before you wake up. Lily nodded, brave, trusting. Promise, promise. She hugged him, careful of the bandages. Whispered against his ear, Be safe, Daddy. Vincent pressed a kiss to her forehead. Always. The Escalade pulled away into the night. At the waterfront warehouse, same rusted shell where Victor had signed away his rights, the Maguire crew waited. 6 men, armed, tense. Their leader, Declan Maguire, mid-40s, scarred cheek, cold blue eyes, stepped forward as Vincent was helped from the vehicle. He leaned on a cane the hospital had provided, shoulder immobilized, side-stitched, but his presence filled the space. Declan's smile was thin. Heard you had a rough day, Callahan. Vincent stopped 3 feet away. It's over. Declan laughed once short, humorless. You think you can just walk away? After what you did to Patty? After you shut down half the product lines we depended on? Vincent's voice was calm, final. The product lines were children. That stops tonight. You want to keep breathing, walk away. Keep pushing, you won't. Silence stretched, cold electric. Declan studied him, searching for weakness. Found none. Finally, slowly, he nodded once. We're done here. He turned. His men followed. Vincent watched them disappear into the dark, then quietly to Marcus burn the old ledgers. Every record, every name. It ends tonight. Marcus nodded. Vincent looked out at the black water lights of the city shimmering across it like scattered stars. Inside him, the storm had not vanished, but it had changed. Love for Lily remained anchor fire reason. Remorse lingered teacher reminder. Rage had cooled, focused now purposeful. And in its place, something he had never allowed himself to feel before. Peace, not the absence of conflict. The certainty that the fight ahead was worth every scar. He turned back toward the Escalade, toward the hospital, toward the small girl waiting in a too-big chair beside an empty bed, toward home. The small family courtroom on the 3rd floor of the Suffolk County Courthouse smelled faintly of old wood polish and printer paper. Late October 2025 sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes that drifted lazily above the rows of oak benches. The judge, an older woman with silver hair pinned neatly, and eyes that had seen too many broken families, sat behind the high bench, reviewing the final stack of documents with quiet care. Vincent sat in the front row, left arm still in a sling beneath his charcoal suit jacket, right side stiff from healing stitches. He wore no tie today. The open collar of his white shirt revealed the edge of fresh bandages. Beside him, small, straight-backed feet, not quite reaching the floor, Lily perched on the edge of the bench. She wore a new navy blue dress with tiny white flowers embroidered along the hem, the first piece of clothing ever bought just for her. Her dark hair had been brushed until it shone and tied back with a simple satin ribbon Joey had chosen from his wife's old sewing box. Bucky sat in her lap, wearing a miniature red bow tie fashioned from a scrap of silk napkin. She clutched him tightly, but her other hand rested in Vincent's small fingers wrapped securely around two of his. Mia Ramirez sat on Lily's other side, 7 years old, dark eyes, watchful, wearing a soft green sweater and jeans that still smelled faintly of the department store tags. After the abduction attempt and the revelations about her own home life, Vincent's lawyers had moved swiftly. Temporary guardianship papers were already signed. Permanent placement would follow today. Mia had been quiet all morning, stealing glances at Vincent, wary at first, then softening each time. Lily leaned against him and whispered something that made him smile. The judge looked up. Her gaze settled on Lily. "Lily Callahan," she said gently. "Do you understand what we're doing today, Lily?" Nodded, small, serious. "Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me in your own words what you want?" The courtroom went still. Even the court reporter paused mid-keystroke. Lily looked first at Mia, who gave her a tiny nod of encouragement, then at Vincent. His gray eyes met hers, steady, soft, filled with everything he could not yet say aloud. Lily took a slow breath, her voice still soft, still carrying the faint tremor of too many years spent being afraid to speak, came out clear. "I want to stay with my daddy. He makes me feel safe. He never hurts me. He sits with me when I have bad dreams, and he doesn't get mad when I'm scared. He kept his promise. He said I could stay forever. And I believe him." She paused, looked down at Bucky, then back up. "I never had a forever before." The judge's expression softened, deep lines around her eyes, easing into something warm, almost maternal. Vincent felt the words land like stones in still water ripples, spreading through every part of him that had once been armored shut. Love surged, passionate, overwhelming, burning away the last remnants of doubt. Remorse lingered quieter now, no longer a scream but a steady ache that reminded him how close he had come to losing everything. Gratitude for this child's forgiveness for her trust nearly undid him. The judge turned to Mia. "And you, Mia, you understand that Mr. Callahan has asked the court to make him your legal guardian?" Mia nodded, small, solemn. "Yes, ma'am. Lily's my best friend," she said. "She said family stays together, and I want to stay with them." Vincent reached across Lily and squeezed Mia's shoulder, gentle, careful. Mia looked up at him, eyes still carrying shadows of distrust but softening with every passing day. The judge smiled, small, genuine. "It is the ruling of this court," she said, voice carrying through the quiet room, "that the petition for adoption of Lily Callahan is granted. From this day forward, your full legal name is Lily Rose Callahan. Vincent Callahan is hereby recognized as your father with all rights and responsibilities that entails." She turned to Mia. "And it is further ordered that Vincent Callahan be granted full legal guardianship of Mia Ramirez, with permanent placement proceedings to follow as recommended by the Department of Children and Families." The gavel came down soft, final. Lily turned to Vincent. Her eyes were huge, shining. "I have a real daddy now," she whispered. Vincent slid off the bench, knelt in front of her same way he had knelt in the snow outside the harbor grill all those nights ago. "You do," he said, voice rough with emotion he no longer tried to hide. "Forever, no matter what." Lily launched herself forward, thin arms wrapping around his neck. Vincent held her, careful of his injuries, but tight enough that she could feel every beat of his heart. Mia hesitated, then leaned in too. Vincent wrapped his good arm around both girls, small, warm, trusting his family. In the gallery behind them, Joey wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Marcus stood near the door, arms folded, face suspiciously bright. Even the court bailiff looked away, blinking hard. After the paperwork was signed, after handshakes and quiet congratulations, Vincent carried Lily out of the courthouse, one girl on each hip, despite the pull on his stitches. Lily rested her head on his shoulder. Mia clung to his neck. Outside autumn air greeted them, crisp, clean smelling of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. Vincent paused on the steps, looked down at his daughters. "I'm going to make mistakes," he said quietly. "I'm not perfect, but I will spend every day trying to be the father you both deserve." Lily touched his cheek, small fingers gentle against the stubble. "You already are." Mia, still a little guarded, still learning, whispered, "Thank you for wanting us." Vincent's throat closed. He pressed a kiss to each girl's forehead. "Always," he said. They drove back to the harbor grill, not the private entrance this time, but the front door. The restaurant had been closed for a private event. Inside, streamers hung from the chandeliers, red, gold, navy blue. Balloons clustered in every corner. A banner stretched across the back wall, hand-painted in bright colors by the entire staff. "Welcome home, Lily and Mia Callahan." Joey emerged from the kitchen carrying an enormous cake shaped like Fenway Park green frosting grass, tiny white frosting bases, chocolate bats, and balls. "From your favorite taste tester," he announced, voice thick. "Welcome to the family." The staff cheered, waiters, cooks, dishwashers, bartenders, all of them crowding forward, smiling, clapping. Lily laughed real bright, free. Mia's eyes widened, then softened into a shy smile. Vincent set both girls down. They ran forward, hugging legs, accepting high fives, accepting love they had never known they could have. Vincent watched, standing just inside the doorway, one hand resting on the frame for support. Love overwhelmed him, quiet, steady, deeper than any empire he had ever built. Remorse remained a gentle scar now, not a wound, reminding him never to forget where he had come from, what he had almost lost. He stepped forward. Lily ran back to him, grabbed his good hand. "Daddy, look." Uncle Joey made Fenway Vincent knelt slowly, painfully, and pulled both girls close. "You're home," he said, voice low, only for them. "Both of you. Forever." Lily pressed her forehead to his. Mia leaned against his shoulder. Vincent closed his eyes. And in that moment, surrounded by chosen family, by light and laughter and cake crumbs on small fingers, he finally understood. Wealth could not buy this. Power could not command it. Only love, raw, selfless, stubborn, could create it. And love, like knowledge, teaches us the deepest lesson of all. That compassion and education can bridge any distance, heal any wound, and prove that neither skin color nor the size of a bank account can ever separate true hearts. To everyone watching this video today, may you be blessed with good health, a joyful life, filled with warmth and daily peace that settles into your bones. If this story touched something inside you, if it reminded you of second chances of love that arrives when you least expect it, of the quiet power of choosing kindness, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking this video, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear that hope still exists. We would love to know, how did this story make you feel? Did any moment bring tears? Did it remind you of someone in your own life who gave you a chance when the world would not? Have you ever been that person for someone else? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Your words matter. They remind us why we keep telling these stories. Thank you for spending this time with us. Take care of yourselves and the people you love. Goodbye for now, and we promise to see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.